Okay, so it looks like that might be 5%. Okay, now let's look at orange juice. What do you think? Am I going to say that orange juice is 40%? No, why not? It's 35, right? Yeah, because it's like, that's not really, apple juice didn't start till 5, and orange juice starts at 5 and it ends at 40, so 40 minus 5 is 35, right? Where does chocolate milk start? At the 40. And where does it end? 70. So we would subtract those two numbers. That is about 30%. Turn this thing back on. What is the relative frequency of orange juice? Okay, so we would say it is 35%. Of the students chose orange juice. Okay, so now they're going to ask us to use these percents that we kind of interpreted. If Ms. Russell surveyed 40 of her students, how many students chose apple juice or chocolate milk? So it doesn't matter which they chose, we're going to put them all in one group and call it the apple juice or chocolate milk group, okay? So how many chose, what percent chose apple juice? 5%. And then the chocolate milk was 30%, right? What does that add up to? Yeah, 35%. It adds to 35%. And then, though, did it ask me for a percent? It said how many, right, out of 40? So how am I going to know how many students chose apple juice or chocolate milk out of 40 students? Well, how could I figure that out? This is where your calculator is going to come in handy. Wouldn't we have to say what's 35% of 40 students? How do you do 35% of 40 students? What calculation are you making, Quinn?
35%, just...
Are you sure? Go ahead. What are you thinking?
That you would do the same process if to get a percent, just you're trying to find a number.
Okay, so there's a couple ways we could calculate it. What are you thinking, Grayson?
You could do 40 times 0.35.
Okay, so there's a couple ways to calculate this. The way that you might have learned earlier is if you got 35% of 40, maybe this was in another year when y'all did percents, and you can still use this if you're fine with it. I'm not going to say 35 times 40. What am I going to multiply times 40? 0.35, right? So 0.35 times 40, what do you get when you do that? 14. Okay, so that's the answer there. We know that 14 students, we're kind of undoing the graph, aren't we, here? So for that first blank, it's going to be 14 students. Remember, the word of usually means multiply when you're thinking it in your head. 35% of 40 means we're going to multiply. We don't want to use 35, but we want to use 0.35, a decimal value when we multiply. So multiply 0.35 times 40. The way that I kind of told you to do it, and I'm going to come up here and write over this graph just because I'm out of room. You remember, you could say, okay, there's a total of 40 students. I don't know how many that is, so I could call it X. This is the second way to do it. But I know that it is, the percentage is 35, and a percentage is always out of 100. So you're always going to have on your percent, this is kind of like your percent, and this is like your real numbers over here. We could make a proportion out of it and cross multiply. I'm not requiring you to do that. I'm just giving it to you as an option, okay? So it would be 100x, if I cross multiply, equal 40 times 35. Hard to read that. 40 times 35. So I'd divide both sides by, I'd multiply that together, and then I could get that number, but eventually I'm going to get x by itself by dividing the 100 out of both sides, and I'll come up with the same number. If you were to stick that in your calculator, you're still going to get 14. So there's okay. Okay, so 0.30 or 0.3, I'll put the 0 down just in case anybody doesn't like chopping that 0 off, and then multiply it by 40. And now, does somebody already have that number? Let me call Sarah, so I never called her. 12, okay? So that's 12. In a minute, we're going to create a bar graph, so we're going to have to kind of go the other direction. I think it's kind of good to see how they work first, though. T.
0.
Good. Why, Chester?
Because there wasn't any people that voted T.
I'm kind of happy T wasn't on there because we don't have to do any math now, right? Paige?
Could you slow down a little, please?
Okay.